February 22nd, 2016. Eviction Day. Portions of the camp at Standing Rock, once home to thousands, burned, mostly in ceremony, as hundreds made the final march out. Law enforcement, just down the road, stood ready to enforce the state-imposed deadline to leave the area. One final walk in song and prayer down Highway 1806. This was the site of so many standoffs and violent confrontations during the months-long protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Final goodbyes as some prepared to hop onto buses and head to locations unknown. But not everyone was willing to leave voluntarily or give up so easily. Back at the camp, a blockade at the Occhetti gates was set on fire. Some were determined to stand until the final moment, but there was a realization the camp was lost.
This movement is not over. This physical location we're being forced off of under unreasonable circumstances, but we don't want anyone to get hurt, and so the movement is not over. We'll still carry on.
Just 24 hours later, the camp was overrun with law enforcement and heavy equipment. There was one last batch of arrests. Then the camps, once home to 10,000 strong, were no more. Less than 4 months later, barely any sign that a massive movement was once here, and the oil they opposed was flowing freely. But that didn't mean water protector Joy Braun was giving up. She simply moved to her home turf.
We are in Eagle Butte at the powwow grounds when we were evicted out of Cannonball. Cheyenne River Sioux Tribal Chairman Harold Frazier invited the water protectors to come camp here because we didn't have any place else to go. And so over the last few months, we've hosted hundreds of water protectors as they've gone home, gone back to their regular lives, or gone on to other fights. We were told that we were going to take the cry of Mini-Wechoni to the world, and we've done that.
Eagle Butte may be more than 120 kilometers from Standing Rock, but the issues are the same. Stop the oil, protect the water. This time protesting against the proposed Keystone XL pipeline. It runs from Hardisty, Alberta to Houston, Texas, more than twice the length of Dakota Access.
So much like you saw Dakota Access go just outside of Standing Rock, Keystone XL will go just outside of Cheyenne River.
It's owned by TransCanada and has been protested by Indigenous peoples from Canada and the U.S. for years. Here at Eagle Butte, about a dozen or so people set up camp.
Are standing up, still standing against Dakota Access, last remaining camp against Dakota Access, and Keystone XL.
Braun says her home nation wouldn't allow Keystone through.
TransCanada has said that they're not expecting to start pre-construction until the spring. And that gives us the winter to get ready. I kind of call Keystone XL our zombie pipeline because it just keeps reinventing itself and keep coming back.
So far, this camp hasn't received the same attention as Standing Rock, but that's okay by Braun. She feels some of the money raised at Standing Rock lacked accountability.
was misused. Some of it was. I have no doubt about that. There were people that came, and I've seen it yet today. People saying they're water protectors and raising money, but they're only using it for themselves. They're not using it for the right things.
Thousands of GoFundMe pages popped up in support of the Standing Rock camp. Over an 8-month period in 2016, nearly $8 million was raised by more than 1,200 GoFundMes in support of the protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline. The movement was the second highest campaign of the year on the popular crowdfunding site. The official Sacred Stone Camp campaign, raised on behalf of LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, brought in more than $3 million alone. Her property was the site of the first camp called Sacred Stone. Brave Bull Allard says she didn't start a fundraising campaign.
Everybody had money, but I don't know how many of the worlds know I never did create a GoFundMe account. How cool is that? But I read it in a paper. And then with that, we had a good man out of Southern California who started a GoFundMe for Sacred Stone, which raised $3 million. And Sacred Stone did finally get the funds into their account, but it was never $3 million. We never got that. And most of that was spent before the camp closed.
Accusations of stealing money flew fast and furious online. Standing Rock Tribal Council had its own PayPal set up. Dave Archambault was the tribal chair during the protests.
I could say that we probably received about 11 million in donations. For the entire movement, there was probably about 40 million that was raised in total. But I can't tell you how or what the other 29 million was used for, because it didn't come through the tribe.
Current tribal chair Mike Faith feels many people took advantage of Standing Rock's name.
I truly believe it was probably used in the wrong way. Some of it actually was spent in a good way here with some of the local groups that were here, but again, some of the fundraising that took place wasn't even close to these areas. Over 5,000 accounts, and of course out of that, Standing Rock was just one.
Chase Ironeyes is a lawyer and former congressional candidate, born and raised in Standing Rock. He feels the costs were justified.
I feel the tribe was justified in reimbursing itself for some of the costs that it incurred in the beginning. But I also I didn't know the figures were that high. I'm on the receiving end of sort of criticism for fundraising and so forth. But I mean, what we raised and spent is kind of minuscule. I do feel that the money, even if people are disagreeing about what happened with the money and what it was used for, that we've got to just we can't concentrate on that for too long.
The local paper, the Teton Times, ran a story in early February of 2017 with the headline, "Legitimizing Plunder at Standing Rock." It estimated as many as 20,000 accounts used Standing Rock and Sacred Stone and asked, where is the money going? Answering its own question with, the short answer is, no one knows. Ironeye says the reservation is still living in poverty.
There's a sour spot there over not knowing really, what happened to all the money.
This Standing Rock counselor says the money made the movement lose focus.
There was people who were sending checks, money, donations, and they were coming here to the tribal office. But when the money started coming in, it's I think that's where a lot of the things started going off. Some people start to lose focus.
But the money raised to support the water protectors of Standing Rock doesn't even come near the money spent to combat it.
We need to get that blue vehicle out of there, and we need to put that fire out before somebody gets hurt.
We also know that it was also Taker Swan's major focus on how to divide and conquer. Everybody had money.
And then there's law enforcement, who came down hard on protesters.
Calling me an indigenous jihadist. They're calling me a terrorist. Immigrants, foreign immigrants on our soil, who call themselves Americans and Canadians, have the audacity to call me a jihadist or a terrorist. We're living in an occupied terror state right now, a corporate terror state.
We'll have that story coming up.
So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
Donald Trump's election was a game changer at Standing Rock. Just days after he was inaugurated, he signed executive orders to push ahead with Dakota Access Pipeline and Keystone XL.
We discussed a lot of different situations. Some wonderful.
One of his first acts as president was reversing a December 4th, 2017 order by the Army Corps of Engineers and signed off by outgoing President Barack Obama.
This is with respect to the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Dakota Access Pipeline.
With that, he shut down the hopes of Standing Rock water protectors. Still, hundreds held on through the winter at the camps until the final eviction in late February. The number of charges water protectors face is staggering. Morton County Sheriff's Department says there are 853 criminal cases involving 1,700 charges. According to the Water Protector Legal Collective, the on-the-ground legal team for the resistance camps, 500-plus cases have already concluded. More than 300 cases have been dismissed. The charges include everything from mischief, incitement to riot, and felony criminal trespass. But according to Chase Ironize, it has been a colossal waste of judicial resources. Ironize himself is fighting felony inciting a riot and misdemeanor criminal trespass related to a raid on a camp that was set up on February 1st, 2017. Charges that could fetch him years in prison.
This is just the beginning. I'll be in court for the rest of my life if it means that I've got if it means that I've got to do something to protect my children's drinking water. That ain't even a question. Like this is a lifelong struggle.
The former United States congressional candidate has become a bit of a celebrity. Leaked internal documents written by private contractor Tiger Swan paint Ironize as being in a leadership role of the NoDAPL movement.
They're calling me an indigenous jihadist. They're calling me a terrorist. Immigrants, foreign immigrants on our soil, who call themselves Americans and Canadians, have the audacity to call me a jihadist or a terrorist. We're living in an occupied terror state right now, a corporate terror state. Yet they have the audacity to think they can say that to me. So
there could have been many more charges. Lawmakers in numerous states have been proposing so-called anti-protest legislation in light of the movement against DAPL. According to the International Center for Not-for-Profit Law, 31 U.S. states have considered 61 bills that restrict the right to protest. So far, 7 laws have been enacted, including one in North Dakota that heightens penalties for riot offenses. Shortly after the protests ended in Standing Rock, Energy Transfer Partners, the owner of the Dakota Access Pipeline, gave $15 million to the state of North Dakota to help offset some of the costs of policing. And all the attention on Cass County Sheriff's Office has given them a bit of prestige. Here, Sheriff Paul Laney shares lessons learned fighting protesters at Standing Rock to law enforcement across the U.S. He describes holding Backwater Bridge, a violent clash in November 2016.
And then they started a bunch of fires right on the other side of our line. So we had Morton County Rural Fire on scene, and you heard all these and probably saw these social media posts about how we are using these water cannons. Well, there's not a water cannon in the state of North Dakota, and no law enforcement agency in North Dakota owns a water cannon. They were standard rural fire department fire hoses, and they were being used to put out the fires. Well, as the protesters started charging towards the line to get through, the fire hose would keep them back. And our people quickly realized, hey, this is the least amount of force. We don't have to hit them with beanbag rounds. We don't have to, at least initially, we don't have to hit them with stabilizer rounds. We don't have to be launching gas yet. We can just use the water and keep them back. Well, of course, they turned into a inhumane, it's freezing out, why are you wetting us down? Well, you know, my mom taught me very early at a young age, if I'm cold in the water, come out of the damn water.
That's a far cry from what actually happened that November 2016 night, according to water protectors. But it was the Intercept's uncovering of documents that showed connections between Tiger Swan and law enforcement that shocked water protector Joy Braun.
They called me a jihadist. Me. I'm the one that said no guns. I'm the one that says take your camp knife and get it back to camp. Stay in prayer. I'm not a jihadist. All I want is water, clean water. I just want the opportunity for my grandchildren to drink clean water and not grow up drinking the contaminated water that I had to drink my whole life.
Tiger Swan's corporate motto is solutions to uncertainty. Aileen Brown was one of the journalists who worked on the Intercept investigation.
Tiger Swan and local law enforcement had a collaboration. I mean, they met regularly to update law enforcement on what private security was gathering in terms of intelligence. What we've seen in the documents we obtained is that, Tiger Swan was communicating very regularly with law enforcement. We know that they held regular briefing sessions that law enforcement officials attended, where they shared information they had collected via social media, aerial surveillance, infiltrators in the camps, other types of informants.
Tiger Swan did not return our request for an interview. Brown says Tiger Swan was just one of the private security firms hired by the pipeline company.
There was one called Layton, 10 Code, RGT, Silverton. So I would estimate about a half a dozen, maybe more.
But Tiger Swan is facing its own difficulties in court. The state of North Dakota has charged the security giant with operating without a license at Standing Rock.
Tiger Swan is fighting this suit by the North Dakota board that regulates private security companies in the state. I believe they have a hearing coming up in October, but they continue to deny that they did anything wrong.
Brown believes security firms making money off protests will become the norm going forward.
I think that there will absolutely be private security firms hired by the pipeline companies at any of these actions. That's absolutely to be expected. We know that there will be security firms working for oil and gas interests at any of these protests.
And the seeds of Standing Rock have spread all the way to Burnaby, British Columbia, where thousands showed up at this anti-Kinder Morgan rally in March 2018. And First Nations leaders like Reuben George of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation led the way.
Well, Standing Rock brought the people together, and that's what's going to happen here. But it would be different. I don't think it will get as harsh as it did, and it was brutal that that happened. That's a violation against the laws of humanity. So in a way, it's going to be like Standing Rock, where the story's going to get out there, but in a way it won't be like Standing Rock because Canada wouldn't do that to their citizens.
Canahoose Manuel has been leading the charge against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. She faced charges for her time in Standing Rock. Those have been dropped.
And what we saw at Standing Rock, we saw major human rights violations. We saw major international Indigenous rights violations by ignoring completely that there was a treaty there in the first place.
Manuel now leads Tiny House Warriors against the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and once again, she's ready for a fight.
Well, that's what we're saying. Let's go. Let's go then if you want to battle. You want to battle against this pipeline, you're facing off with great power. When you're facing off with the last of the wild Indians here on the West Coast, we're unceded in our territory and our mind.
And the embers of the fire started in Standing Rock don't end there. Camps have spread their fight to the Bayou Bridge pipeline, being built by Energy Transfer Partners, to Enbridge's Line 3 in the Minnesota-Wisconsin area, and to Nebraska to fight Keystone XL.
We developed what we call Camp 101, and we're spreading it to the camps, how to organize, how to set up, how to feed your camp, all of these things. But I also know that Standing Rock was a seed. Standing Rock was just this little thing that went into the ground, and now it's growing everywhere and spreading everywhere.
We lost the physical location, but everything. Often I get asked, "What's the next move? Where is this going to go?" But for me, it's been a continuum. It has never stopped. We're all continuing to fight. Now, camp is the globe. Camp is everywhere. There are no boundaries.
Thank you.
There was an electric chair that was used for fun.
These crimes happened to us as children. Now you're victimizing me as an elder now.
If reconciliation is going to be real in this country, it has to be made real with the survivors of St. Anne's Residential School.